On this day, December 25th, 1941, what people refer as the Black Christmas, British soldiers surrendered and the Japanese occupies Hong Kong. The ruling lasted for 3 years and 8 months. It was considered to be the darkest hours of Hong Kong. The bleeding, the violence, the endless hours of pain. The occupation was impactful to everyone that was in Hong Kong. Everyone was in shock, all because of these men.
Japanese leaders such as Rensuke Isogai, who was the governor of Hong Kong during the Japanese occupation, and the general of the Japanese Imperial Army, Takashi Sakai, a superior general, Commander Tanaka of the 23rd Japanese Army, and General Hideki Tojo, the Prime Minister of Japan at the time, were all responsible for the Japanese occupation of Hong Kong. They all played big roles in this massacre. Finally, when they were executed, the Japanese surrendered in 1945.
These men are the Japanese soldiers that were ruling and causing destruction during the ruling. They are known to be cruel, heartless, and their actions are completely unacceptable. They kill everyone that doesn't satisfy them. Even little kids that won't stop crying were shot to death. In fact, once, a family of 3 were on the streets after curfew, and they were shot dead immediately, with no sign of mercy.
They took the chance to cause mayhem everywhere, even in hospitals where people are just innocently recovering from their injuries caused by the Japanese soldiers. Though the Japanese soldiers raped the nurses and killing the injured British patients. There were a total of 7 nurses in that hospital and 170 British soldiers killed during their recovery. The 7 nurses were eventually raped and killed.
Life was most certainly hard and unpleasant under the Japanese ruling. Their brutal ways to take over Hong Kong, through the 3 years and 8 months, people in Hong Kong had a lack of food supply, and the quality wasn't any better. Everyone ended with a specific fixed amount where they were only allowed to buy 0.24 kg of rice a day for their family. The Japanese were taking everything away from them: homes, jobs, education, families, and overall, their lives.
Japanese rule took into effect and changed people's everyday lives by changing the language learned in schools, banning English lessons, and introducing Japanese lessons instead. Even English-named streets were changed to Japanese names, and Hong Kong currency were all exchanged to Japanese yen. If caught with Hong Kong currency, the consequence was punishable by death. Since exchange rates were unfavorable and high towards Hong Kong citizens, the citizens got poorer as well.
So many lives were taken away during this time period. A 1.6 million population reduced to only 500,000 due to the repatriation policy, murder, disease, and poverty. The repatriation policy was to send people back to mainland, causing the decrease in population over the 3 years of ruling by the Japanese.
Everything the Japanese did was for themselves and their people. No one killed by the Japanese were ever acknowledged again, and the soldiers killed by the Japanese were lost in existence in the span of 4 years. The Japanese took time to create shrines for their fallen soldiers, while all the dead Chinese and British were left unnoticed.
Japan officially surrendered, ending the occupation on September 16, 1945. British and Hong Kong soldiers were released from prison, and the oppressed became the oppressors, as troops held the Japanese soldiers at gunpoint, as they were being put in the cells that many of the British and Hong Kong troops had come out of. The people in Hong Kong celebrated in the streets, as Imperial Japanese flags were burned and British flags re-raised.
In conclusion, from looking at the Japanese rule in Hong Kong during World War II, we can see the relationships of power can affect people's mental and physical states. For the people who hold the power, they can start taking advantage of it, causing them to mistreat and look down upon the people without power. For those people, life can become unbearable when they have no control over with what they do and how they live. In this particular situation, we can see that when the Japanese held power in Hong Kong, they severely mistreated the local Hong Kong and British people there. And for the locals and prisoners, the quality of daily life steadily degraded as time went on.